The lands to the west of New Jersey gave birth to the Quaker colony of Pennsylvania. It was the 12th of England's 13 American colonies and was the last one to be founded in the 17th century. For the most part, the story of how the Pennsylvania colony came to be revolves around the life of its founder, William Penn. William Penn was born in the year 1644 into a very wealthy English family. Penn was raised in the Church of England, but became a Quaker at the age of 16, and it was the religious beliefs of the Quakers that led him to the colonies of America. The Quakers, or Society of Friends, was a religion founded in England in the mid-17th century, and it was at this meeting house, just outside of London, that William Penn worshipped and is buried. Quaker meeting houses were similar to those of the Puritans, in that they were quite plain and had no altars, stained glass, or religious images. But the Quakers themselves were considerably different from the Puritans, because they didn't follow a definite set of religious beliefs, and they didn't have ministers. And even today, Quakers do not believe in using force or going to war. Because they are pacifists, they refuse to perform in military combat. Back in Penn's time, they also refused to bow and take their hats off to higher-ups, as was the English custom of the day. And they would not pay taxes that went to support the Church of England. So it is no surprise that their religious beliefs often got them locked up in jail. In the 1670s, Quakers began immigrating to America to find religious freedom. Some established meeting houses, especially in the Jersey colonies and in Rhode Island. But William Penn wanted to start a new colony of his own, where people of all faiths could come and freely practice their religions. It was because William Penn's father had once loaned King Charles II a large sum of money that the colony of Pennsylvania came to be born. For to repay the debt, William Penn received a grant from the king in 1681 for a huge area of land that the king had already given to his brother, the Duke of York. It lay between the colonies of Maryland, West Jersey, and New York, and was as large as England itself. Because the new colony's land was covered with dense forests, Penn named it Pennsylvania, a word which means Penn's Woods. William Penn thought of Pennsylvania as what he called a holy experiment, a place where Quaker ideals of tolerance and equality could be put into practice. Penn had a magnificent vision for his colony, which he spelled out in The Frame of Government of the Province of Pennsylvania in America. When he completed this document in 1682, Penn had laid out a plan for government in which two groups that were elected by male landowners would work to write the colony's laws. William Penn also made sure that in Pennsylvania, American Indians were treated with fairness and were not cheated out of their land. 1682 was an extremely busy year for William Penn. For that autumn, after composing Pennsylvania's frame of government, he arrived in America to supervise the laying out of the colony's new capital city, which he named Philadelphia, meaning the city of brotherly love, a place that rapidly grew to become the largest and most important city in the American colonies. During the small amount of time he spent in America, Penn lived here at Pennsbury Manor, situated just upstream from Philadelphia, on the banks of the Delaware River, looking out at the colony of West Jersey. This fine estate shows just how well the proprietor of an American colony lived in the 17th century. Naturally, the heart of the estate was Penn's home. It was a comfortable place with fine furniture and spacious bedrooms in which could be found special stands to hold the wigs that were so fashionable with both men and women back then. In Penn's large dining room hung a portrait of the man who had made him proprietor of Pennsylvania, King Charles II. And in an adjacent building, Penn even had a good-sized brewery for making beer. In 1684, after barely a year at Pennsbury Manor, William Penn had to return to England in order to solve a border dispute with a neighboring colony of Maryland. And 15 years were to pass before he was able to return to Pennsylvania. That was because the Glorious Revolution occurred during Penn's stay in England, during which he saw his friend King James II forced from the throne and Parliament gain supreme power in the English government. Because he was a great supporter of the deposed king, he was arrested twice for treason, but was never convicted. Nonetheless, during that time, William Penn was not allowed to return to Pennsylvania. Penn got into trouble again when war broke out with France, and New York asked Pennsylvania for help protecting its border with French Canada. At first, the peace-loving Quakers of Pennsylvania refused to fight to help their fellow English colonists, and as a result, Penn lost his proprietorship. However, after Pennsylvania agreed to supply the needed troops, Penn regained control and returned to the colony. To encourage Europeans to settle there, William Penn advertised the advantages of living in Pennsylvania in many parts of Europe. The great religious freedom he offered immediately attracted people from a variety of Protestant religious sects. These hard-working immigrants helped to turn Pennsylvania into a very prosperous colony. In fact, Pennsylvania became the breadbasket of America, and large quantities of the wheat raised there were exported to Europe. Just before the outbreak of the War for Independence, Philadelphia had surpassed the older cities of Boston, New York, and Charleston to become the largest city in the American colonies. In 1770, Philadelphia had a population of 28,000 people, compared to the 25,000 living in New York City. Philadelphia's port on the Delaware River was always filled with ships that sailed the triangular trade routes between Europe, Africa, and the West Indies. At that time, the most important building in the city was the Pennsylvania State House, where the colony's legislature met. Today, the old State House is considered to be the most historically important building in the United States and is known as Independence Hall, because before, during, and after the Revolutionary War, it was the center of the political activity that shaped the United States. It was the home of the First and Second Continental Congresses, the original attempts at forming a unified American government. It was the place where the Declaration of Independence was signed. It served as one of the first Capitol buildings of the United States after the war. And it was where the Constitutional Convention took place that produced the United States Constitution. The old State House bell, now known as the Liberty Bell, rang out to proclaim America's Declaration of Independence from Great Britain in 1776. It cracked many years later and has been a cherished national symbol ever since. During the late colonial period, Philadelphia was also home to Benjamin Franklin, a man who played many important roles in American history as a great statesman, inventor, and scientist. Franklin, a Quaker, was one of the main civic leaders in Philadelphia. In fact, he served as its deputy postmaster, helped found its public library, its first militia, a hospital, an insurance company, and the American Philosophical Society, housed in the building seen here, a group that worked to promote the study of science in the United States.